On this edition of FedGov Today with Francis Rose, a rule to remember for your agency's data decisions.
If you don't understand the data you need or the data you have or both, it makes it really hard to imagine how to solve a problem using data.
Former NASA CIO Renee Wynn on FedGov Today in just a moment. First, a scheduling note. The next FedGov Today podcast is coming next Tuesday. No Thursday show this week because of Thanksgiving tomorrow. The show returns next Tuesday as usual with the former director of DISA, Lieutenant General Bob Skinner, U.S. Air Force retired. You always get the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, on the FedGov Today YouTube channel, or on demand at fedgovtoday.com. Federal leaders tell me they're planning into 2026 now as they get their teams back to work after the shutdown. That planning should consist of three main elements, according to Renee Wynn, former Chief Information Officer at NASA. Welcome, my friend. It's great to talk to you as always. Happy Thanksgiving. You tell me two headlines and one realization that technology people should be thinking about as we go into 2026. The first headline, focus on organizational capacity building. Why is that the place you advise folks to start, Renee? Welcome.
Thank you, Francis. Always a treat to spend time with you. Organizational capacity building. You know why we like this term? Because efficiency feels like you're going to get rid of me. But if I put the civil servant or the human in the middle, I'm looking at the person going, what can I do to help bring more of your talent to the forefront and deliver against mission? And if I focus on gaining more from an individual versus efficiency, I will imagine things I've never imagined before. It might be quite simply that somebody has difficulties reading for long periods of time. Great. Let me get you the tools to turn text into listening. Now you've got greater productivity going on, right? Again, back to the person. What data are you missing that, boy, if it was fed up to you, very easily or quick, how do I go get it? Again, I'm bringing more productivity out of you by taking away time of the friction time. And making it easier because I'm delivering on my screen, so to speak, or easily delivering on that one. I also like this term, and I think I like this mostly for this reason, is it is easier for people to imagine what they might need to do more instead of asking them to take things away and still be able to do more. And so you're turning it on its head to help people blossom where they are and bring the tools to them, bring the data to them, bring a team to them. Sometimes it's like, you're really good at this, but I don't really get that. Let's bring the team together and make great things happen. And since it's around Thanksgiving, I think it's appropriate to say, let's make more pie instead of fighting over that last slice.
I love that analogy because I love pie. To your point on organizational capacity building, how do you advise somebody to stay focused on that pie building idea, which sounds like there's more to go around for everybody, and keep people from sliding into the idea of let's try to do more with less, which has been so prevalent in government over the last, 5, 10, 15, 20 years?
Yeah. It's a hard thing because folks will begin to think, right? I say organizational capacity building. People are like, what the heck do you mean by that one? Well, it's just coming up with those stories associated with it to grab the human imagination. Having worked in some technical environments, stories still matter. Capture the heart and then bring the data in. And then people will feel like they can also contribute to what you're doing. Which is another point, is don't go in saying I have all the answers, but say, all right, here's what we've got. Like they did on Apollo 13. Here's what we've got. And they made it work under conditions that were so stressful. So stressful. It's not some of the stuff we would see ordinarily here on terra firma. But I think there's a part to creating a crisis, maybe not generating it, but trying to compel some urgency to what you're trying to do. And that is, if you focus on mission, which I was so grateful to be able to do that for 30 years. Francis, you focused your career on mission delivery as well, bringing out those stories. Well, if we focus on mission delivery and a sense of urgency and what tools and what people do we need to sort of get more out of our organization than we've ever imagined, from the stories from the mission side, you might be able to do stuff. And it's actually a little bit of what Elon Musk has used at SpaceX, right? I'm not paying $10,000 for that part. You go figure out how to do it. So you got to come up with these urgencies that don't panic people, but a sense of urgency that sparks that imagination. And there's no science to that one. That's just kind of having enough time around people to figure out what lights their fires.
A couple of thoughts about that. That idea of we're not going to pay X dollars for that part, you go figure out a solution, can imply either you go figure it out, I trust you to be able to do so, or you go figure it out, dang it, why haven't you done it yet? Or maybe both at the same time. And I wonder how you direct what you present into people in such a way that they take the former rather than the latter. I trust you. I think you're smart, talented, whatever enough to be able to find a solution to this problem.
What an interesting way to put that, Francis. I would say, I trust you, and someone's mind could go to failing. But I'm going to say, in many ways, we've lost. Failure is an option. How do we learn best, right? you know, when you make a perfect cake, you're like, yeah, that went really well. When the cake doesn't quite turn out as expected, you have these aha moments. Yeah, I probably should have checked the expiration date on the baking powder. Oh, look, it's older than my grandson, right? So there's these little things that when it doesn't go well, we learn and we gain from that knowledge. Now, there are lots of people that can read a book and make it all work. I'm not one of them. I'm one of those that's very tactically or kinetically oriented. And when I make those mistakes, those things will stick with me a lot longer, and I'll iterate and bring them forward. So I would say to folks is failure is an option because I want you to learn. And if somebody's concerned about, what is that string you're giving me about? Is it to help me up or do something else unmentionable here? Then have these check-in points with the individual, but don't have them come to you. You go to them. Meeting people where they are physically is also a really good thing. And my final point on this one is I'd rather have failure as an option to learning than a failure of the imagination and not being able to deliver.
The other thing I wanted to say about the comments that you made a few moments ago, this focus on mission delivery and organizational capacity, I think, is especially important in a good way because I think I've heard more in the last year or two around the government than in my previous entire career talking about the federal government, focused on outcomes versus outputs and the desire to focus on outcomes for people who are right front lines in mission delivery. And that's starting to, I think, filter down through the rest of these organizations. Do you think that's a fair observation on my part?
Yes, I think there is a greater focus on outcomes. And for every mission, it's a balance of outcomes versus outputs, right? So we can point to get a rocket getting us to the moon. The successful outcome is that we get to the moon again, as in the United States. Well, there are other outcomes along the way. Will the engines have enough power? How much fuel is it going to take? Do our engines match the amount of fuel that we're going to take that? Do we have the materials that can withstand space exploration and all this stuff? The answer is yes, 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 we can do this. So I would say yes to the outcomes and design them as steps along the way, because humans love to have some success along the way. But outcomes and outputs also need to go together, and you need to find that right balance to go with it. And it's not create it and walk away. It's, oh, okay, maybe we're getting the wrong outcome, right? We get human behaviors to deliver, I sold this many widgets, and now we have falsified widget sales. So how do you find this right balance between outcomes and outputs? It's not one or the other, and outcomes are far more heartwarming than outputs in that. But also be open to changing them, because if your trajectory, continuing with our rockets here, if your trajectory is not towards the moon, then you want to change your path sooner rather than later. And so engagement with the team across the board, I think, is really important to do as part of the process as well.
You can't help yourself with the rocket and space references.
I know.
That's okay. That's all right. It's you can you can take the CIO out of NASA, but you can't take the NASA out of the CIO. All right. The second headline that you pointed me to is the value of wisdom of time in saddle. I think I have a pretty good idea what that means, but give me the definition there, if you would, Renee.
Government systems, having worked in 2 agencies, are really complicated. And civil servants, myself included in this statement, we should never say we've tried it before. What you can offer up from previous experiences, here are the things we did, here were the outputs and outcomes. Now, let's work with this baseline. Oh, and by the way, here are some guardrails, right? You do have these guardrails. Some missions are so critical, some missions are classified. Well, we're not going to talk about them not in a classified environment. Or we're going to actually keep them on these particular servers, or the data for this we're going to get from this source after years and years. This is our trusted source, and here's why. That's something comes from being around for a while. But offer it up in, here are the things I would recommend you need to strongly consider as your guardrails. Here's what we've done in the past. And now I invite you with your wisdom from a different domain, with a different perspective, to do this. And now let's, have that ugly process, but fun process of throwing it all together, mixing up and coming away from that. You see that in all the professions. From someone who repairs a shoe, I've got a great one, near me, and I do take them in, right? I don't want to add to many landfills. Looks at it and says, yes, I can do it. Well, if someone's newer, and I tear my shoes up pretty badly, Francis, right? The newer person might say, no, I can't, right? Now, if a senior person who's got years and years of this says, I can't, they always add why. Whereas an I can't from maybe a junior person doesn't have a why, because they don't have enough to pull from or enough confidence to pull from to sort of say, and here's why we can't do it. So there is this balance between having time in saddle with a profession, as well as having new views, and having them both on the same team is a great way, I think, to even garner more organizational capacity.
All right. You mentioned data, and data rules is the realization that you pointed me to. And we talked a little bit before we went on the air about how when the data in an organization is a mess, the results they get from artificial intelligence are going to be a mess as well. What's your sense of the journey that agencies are on from a data perspective, and whether that, I know you're not implying that agencies in general or any in particular have a mess of data, but what's your sense of where are we on that journey in your view?
And it depends, really. I think it's the maturity of the agency in terms of seeing data as the real, not the system itself, but the data that are in the system that helps drive some of those answers. And massive amounts of data, right? We're celebrating 250 years of the Postal Service, 250 years of our country. And we have been archiving information since George Washington had spies for the American Revolution. And so paper, ink, probably can't read it anymore, some of it, all the way up to we get terabytes of data, probably Well, when I left NASA, we were 56 terabytes a day from space. So just scads and massive amounts of data, everything's a sensor. And that, so with these massive amounts of data and your purpose of gathering the data has maybe been singularly focused, now we're getting better at, okay, I have the data here and I can use it over here too to do something. If I want to look at data associated with being in the HR world, right? How long have I had some people around here? Who's eligible to retire? Where have they lived? There's all these different questions you can ask, but that data actually may not be all in the same system. I'm just telling you, because we glommed on, we were worried about privacy, all great. But if you don't understand the data you need or the data you have or both, it makes it really hard to imagine how to solve a problem using data. Good news is so many tools from the private sector can help you address your massive amounts of data and quickly move to using that data for metrics or to solve problems or something like that. And hopefully agencies with the appropriate cybersecurity and supply chain risk look are going to look at those tools and see what they can do to sort of leapfrog over or go back to and build that organizational capacity. And that's where your wisdom in saddle can also help you point towards data to get to results faster.
Is there, this last question, is there a metric or a marker or set of metrics or markers that can show an organization when it has its arms around its data enough to be confident then that the results that it gets from any analytics tools, whether it's AI or something else, they can be confident the results that they're getting are decisionable?
I don't really have a good answer for that. But what I was thinking about is, so NASA collects data by its missions. Juno, ran into a planet because we can, but actually got a lot of great data. The solar probes, right? We've got a lot of solar flares. There was recently a watch on communication systems potentially being interrupted by a solar flare. So when I look at, you say, gosh, a planet and the sun and the moon and communication systems, why would I need to bring that data together? I think you would feel success towards problem solving when folks are like, I think we've got all the data sources we need to go after this problem. Or 6 months into the problem, they look at their schedule and they say, yeah, we're going to now make our deadlines because we've been so curious. We found all the things that we needed that we can actually now really focus on delivering the widget at the one end because we've scoured the place, the universe. Maybe I'll just go there, right? We've scoured the universe of data and we think we have all the right sources to really sort of solve that problem. And so I think it's project specific or program specific when you feel like you've got the right access to the data to answer engineering problems, mathematical problems, philosophical and ethical problems. There are all sorts of ethical issues in the government on a regular basis. And so when you feel like you've got the right picture in front of you, or at least roughly right, then I think you can answer the question of now we did. But everything does have its unique nature. And so I don't know that I'm certainly not aware of sort of that single thing. Now I feel like we're there.
It's always great to catch up with you, my friend. Thank you very much for your time today.
Great. Thank you so much, Francis. And you take care.
You can read more about data on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. An important FedGov Today TV is coming Sunday, December 7th. You'll go with me to the Pentagon for the first long-form TV interview with the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Derail. That's Sunday, December 7th, 10:30 a.m. on ABC7 in Washington and on the FedGov Today YouTube channel. FedGov Today TV's coming to the American Forces Network, too. Starting with that show with Admiral Caudle, you'll see FedGov Today TV on military installations, ships at sea, and embassies around the world. You can read more about FedGov Today on AFN on today's show page at fedgovtoday.com. I'm Francis Rose. I'll talk to you on Tuesday. Thanks for listening.